And thank you, committee, for allowing me to lay out House Bill 366. Unfortunately and sadly, domestic violence is pervasive in our state and across America. 74% of all Texans have either themselves or a family member and or a friend experience some form of domestic violence. Moreover, the link between domestic violence and mass shootings cannot be ignored. As we've heard in previous testimony, there is a link between all of these issues, whether it's emotional illness, mental health, and school safety. And 54% of the mass shootings in the United States, the perpetrator also shot a current or former intimate partner or family member. If we're going to talk about mass shootings, we must address domestic violence. HB 366 seeks to address the issue by directing the State Board of Education to adopt research-supported curriculum standards to provide students with life-saving education on age-appropriate, healthy relationships, healthy life skills, and effective communication. Primary prevention strategies like healthy relations curriculum introduce new thinking processes, coping methods, and relationship skills that promote healthy, non-violent relationships. Data from evaluations of this type of curriculum programs report increases in knowledge about dating violence, positive changes in attitude, and self-reported decrease in the perpetuation of violence. By requiring the SBOE to adopt curriculum standards for healthy relationships in education, we are taking an important step towards combating violence in our state. We made a couple of changes in the committee sub. Did we like the committee sub?
We did.
Okay, sorry. And those recommendations came from the Texas Homeschool Coalition that requires, and that bill now requires parent or guardians to receive notifications on opt-out program and an advisory to look over the curriculum. Members, if we really want to combat violence and we really want to prepare students holistically for the future, then we thought this would be a good idea. And with that, I'm open for any questions, and I reserve the right to close.
Thank you very much, members. Any questions? Representative Tellerico.
First, Representative Gonzalez, love this bill. I think it's so important. Two quick kind of operational questions. Do you see this as distinct and separate from sex ed?
Yes.
Schools? Okay, so it's separate from sex ed. Second, do you have an idea of what class, would it be a standalone separate class, or would it be integrated into a science or a life skills? Is there any thoughts about, or is it up to a district?
It's really up to all it's allowing is for the SBOE to develop the standards, and then therefore the school district can implement it in any way, shape, or form.
Well, I love it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Representative.
All right, members, any other questions? All right, we'll reserve your right to close.
Thank
we'll
you,
start
Chairman.
taking public testimony. Let's start with Jeff Temple, professor, testifying neutrally on the bill, and you'll be followed by Carol Fedrick. Thank you for being here.
Thank you all so much. Thank you, Ms. Gonzalez. All right, so I'm Jeff Temple. I'm a professor and a psychologist at UTMB Health in Galveston. I also direct the Behavioral Health and Research Program within the Department of OB-GYN. I am a researcher, and I research dating violence and domestic violence. I have been funded by National Institute of Health, Centers for Disease Control, and National Institute of Justice, currently implementing and evaluating a healthy relationships program throughout the Houston area, and I think you all have a one-pager on the program that we implement called Fourth R, Healthy Relationships, Reading, Writing, Arithmetic. Last R is relationships. Two of those don't start with R. So I'm going to spend the next 1.5 minutes telling you that I think that this is arguably the most important bill that y'all will hear today. Relationships are foundational. They are critical to everything that we do. And despite this, we get absolutely no education on what relationships look like. So how do kids learn? Well, they learn from watching their friends who aren't very good at it. They learn from the media, which is terrible. They learn from parents, which sometimes is bad and sometimes it's good, but even well-intentioned parents argue in front of their kids and then make up away from their kids, so their kids don't get to see how to resolve conflicts in a healthy way. Or they learn from trial and error, which is how most of them do it. So despite this critical skill, they don't learn how to break up with someone or how to apologize or how to resolve conflicts in a nonviolent way or anything about how to be in a relationship. And if we could give them these skills, then I think that we can make a lot of these other things that we're worried about in schools a non-issue, whether it's violence or guns or anything else. We don't have to worry about that as much if we can increase their relationship skills. And it serves a dual purpose in the sense that kids that aren't going to be violent, we're not worried about, we still give them the resilient skills and how to be in a relationship, and they can take that with them for a better, profitable, healthier life. And then the kids, I know I'm out of time, the kids that really need it, we can prevent things like dating violence. And if we do that, we can prevent domestic violence, which we know costs the American taxpayers about $8 billion a year in healthcare and lost productivity. And by the way, we don't have to have a whole bunch of different little programs on sexual health, bullying, all that. We have one on relationships that kind of takes care of it all. Sorry, I went over time. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Members. Any questions? Representative Gonzalez.
Thank you, Chairman Bernal. Just really quickly, thank you, Dr. Temple, for being here. I've been reading some of your research, so I appreciate it. Can you just repeat the last thing you said for my colleagues who walked in a little bit late?
Sure, absolutely. So,
sorry, the first thing you said. Yeah.
I was listening in the back.
So you heard him say this was the most important bill we could pass. I just want to make sure you heard that, Representative Ashby.
Can I add one thing real
Yes.
quick, Ms. Gonzalez? So I'll also say that I was on the school board in Galveston ISD, which I know I share a lot of that with you guys up here. And I think it's the fiscally responsible thing to do to support this bill because it will save money.
All right. Any other questions for the witness? Thank you, sir.
Thank you all so much.
All right. Next, we have Carol Fedrick testifying against the bill, and you will be followed by Will Francis.
Good morning. Good morning. My name is Carol Fedrick, and I'm here to ask you to vote no on House Bill 366 for 4 reasons. According to the U.S. News, Texas ranks 37th in the country in public education. We need to be spending our limited time and resources on academics. 2, this bill would make teaching sexuality education mandatory. Units on relationships are being taught under human sexuality education. This bill would eliminate the freedom of local communities to determine what information best reflects their values. Number 3, the language of this bill is nebulous. Age-appropriate material supported by research that is peer-reviewed in compliance with accepted scientific methods, deemed accurate by leading professional organizations with relevant experience. Who determines those things? Promoters of comprehensive, inclusive sex ed say those requirements are best filled by organizations like Planned Parenthood, SICAs, Advocates for Youth, and others who believe in the sexual rights of children. These social change advocates unequivocally reject all scientific methods, data, and research that is not in lockstep with their ideology, regardless of how reputable the source. Number 4, the language of this bill is duplicitous. Under the guise of healthy relationships, it would mandate teaching material that is designated to normalize LGBTQ behavior as outlined in the National Sexuality Education Standards, of which healthy relationships is a key component K through 12. Austin ISD is currently using the NSES to rewrite their sex ed curriculum. School districts in your district may be moving in that direction as well. House Bill 366 is not about healthy relationships. It's about social change. It's about requiring, by law, teaching children, K through 12, that any behavior in any relationship can be healthy. And again, I respectfully ask you to not approve this bill. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, members. Any questions? I have one. In other states where they have curriculum and programs like this, have they experienced the kind of things that you're warning us about today?
The National Sexuality Education Standards are being promoted across the nation. They're not national. There are individual districts that are picking up the standards. Austin is my primary experience district, and they are, like I said, rewriting their sex ed based on those standards.
Do we know if we've seen an increase or a decrease in either suicide, attempted suicide, intervention of a potential active shooter in those places?
This is not about that. This is about sexual, healthy relationships.
Okay. All right. Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.
Members, any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Will Francis. And Mr. Francis, you'll be followed by Deborah Simmons. Or maybe Simons. You'll correct me if I get it wrong. Will.
Good morning, committee members. My name is Will Francis. I'm the Government Relations Director for the National Association of Social Workers Texas chapter, and I'm here to testify for HB 366. I'd just like to put a couple statistics out there to put this in context. Per the Health and Human Services Office of Adolescent Health, 41% of high school students have had sex in the last year. The additional research in Texas, though, which is, I think, the majorly concerning thing and why this bill is so important, through the Youth Risk Behavior Survey, 6.1% of high school students experience sexual dating violence, and 7.1% of students experience physical dating violence within a relationship. So kids are having relationships, and within that, there can be major negative outcomes. Additionally, the Health and Human Services Office of Adolescent Health has some great data per parent report, which shows that 84% of kids have a mentor in a school or neighborhood or community. So there are people that they listen to in schools, that there are people that they will accept information and resources and education from. And so we need to be teaching them about healthy relationships. We need to be teaching them about intimate partner violence, about what it means to be able to speak up when the partner is doing something that they do not approve of. And I'd also like to add that as a parent of a kindergartner in the Austin Independent School District, I received a form from the school which said that my child would be taught human sexuality and responsibility, and that if I wanted to opt out of it, I could sign that form. So they are very much engaging in parents. They are not promoting or pushing anything on students. They're doing it in a way that both engages parents and puts information out there which is evidence-based research and is all about promoting healthy relationships. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you, Mr. Francis. Members, any questions? All right. Thank you. All right, Deborah Simmons, hope I got that right. Testifying against the bill, and you'll be followed by Nicole Hutchins.
I'm Debbie Simmons. I am against House Bill 366. Thank you for the opportunity to testify on this sex education bill. I served as the secretary of the Round Rock ISD School Health Advisory Council, also known as the SHAC. Through that experience and since, I learned of the Texas Freedom Network SHAC initiative to infiltrate SHACs across Texas to promote comprehensive sex education, Planned Parenthood and Playboy's SECUS organization, the Future of Sex Education Initiative, Dr. Alfred Kinsey's Child Abuse Masked as Experiments, and much more. Former Planned Parenthood President Cecile Richards formed the Texas Freedom Network in the mid-90s to combat the anti-choice radical policy agenda of the extreme right in Texas. On their website, this group categorizes House Bill 366 as a reproductive rights bill. Not only is it a sex education bill, it is a pro-abortion bill. The goal of these groups is to implement comprehensive sex education, including adolescent consent to sexual activity, safe sex, social emotional learning, healthy relationship education, and the rights to adolescents to access contraception. Ensuring that local community values are reflected in the district's health education instruction, Texas Education Code 28004 requires the Citizen SHAC to recommend human sexuality instruction to the trustees, who must review and adopt curriculum, and parents must be notified and provided the opportunity to opt out their children. House Bill 366 creates a new section in the Education Code. Rather than curricula being recommended by the SHAC, adopted by the Board of Trustees, communicated to the parents with the opportunity to opt out as the law requires, House Bill 366 circumvents parental authority and implements the National Sexuality Education Standards. Please protect children and parental rights by voting no on this bill. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, ma'am, for being here. Members, any questions? All right. Thanks a lot. Next, we have Nicole Hutchins testifying against the bill, and you will be followed by Mason Pruitt.
Good
Good morning. My name is Nicole Hutchins, and I'm the Senior Policy Analyst for Texas Values. We're the largest statewide organization focusing on faith, family, and freedom across the state of Texas, with over 100,000 supporters across the state represented in all 254 counties. And today I'm speaking in opposition of the bill today. While I understand and I appreciate Representative Gonzalez that you laid out the intent, unfortunately the text that we're seeing, though, is not clear on defining what the term healthy relationships are. And the parents that we represent for our organizations have been very, very concerned because they're seeing in multiple school districts where there's relationship curriculum that is promoting types of relationship that goes against parental values. For example, there's a number of problems with some of the sex ed curriculum we're seeing already, and that's, Debbie talked about how that's supposed to go through a proper vetting system. But unfortunately, we're seeing even in those instances where parents are extremely concerned that relationships such as sexual promiscuity, sexual relationships, LGBT agenda is being promoted just within that arena. What this bill does, as Debbie said, bypasses that SHAC process, bypasses that parental input process. And it's not clearly defined. What kind of relationships are we talking about? While I appreciate the intent, the problem is that healthy relationships to some people could mean students having sex multiple times throughout their high school year. It could be even earlier years. It could be LGBT relationships that parents are not promoting those types of values. So for all these reasons, I strongly encourage this committee not to support the bill. Thank you.
Okay, members, any questions for Representative Tellerico?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So when I'm reading Representative Gonzalez's bill, it looks like the State Board of Education is going to outline specifics for the curricula in terms of healthy relationships. Is that how you understand the bill?
That's how I understand the bill, but as Debbie said, when it talks about these kind of issues, that needs to go through the SHAC. That needs to go through parents looking for it. And as a previous witness also said, we've got to be focusing on reading, writing, math, science, history. That's where our focus needs to be, and making sure that we're strong in those areas. This type of bill bypasses what should go through the SHAC and with more parental input.
Do you think that healthy relationships in the classroom, romantic relationships being one part of that, but also with adults and peers, is critical for academic success?
I think at this point we don't know what healthy relationships are based on the terms in the bill.
Okay.
And I think, even if we took a poll in this room, what does healthy relationships mean? That'll be something different for every single person, and it's not clearly defined.
Do you think that a relationship between a student and a teacher that's built on trust and empathy will lead to better academic results?
That's a great question, and something that we can talk about with teachers. But again, we don't know what that, we're also seeing problems where there's bad relationships between parents and with students and teachers. But that's not defined in this bill, and so I can't comment on on language that's not written.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the questions.
I have one, and I probably should have asked the last witness, and I'm just curious. Tell me why or how the parental opt-out piece isn't satisfactory to address some of these concerns.
Are you referring to a committee substitute?
I'm referring to, and I could be mistaken, my understanding is that parents would have the option of opting their students out of this class or portion of a class when it's offered on their campus. Is that an insufficient measure?
Well, I'm not seeing a parent opt-out piece in the current legislation. Again, I can't comment on a bill that I haven't seen, and I understand the process, how committee subs work. But even with the parent opt-out, we're seeing problems in school districts where parents aren't even getting notifications of opt-out right now. And that's just with the sex ed piece. So now you're adding on another piece of curriculum that parents are going to be concerned about. How do we know that the opt-out is going to be seen? Again, I can't speak to language I can't see, but what is the opt-out process? Are they sent a notification? Are they having meetings talking about it? And so that's where we're concerned.
Okay, well, I think that at a minimum, that's one piece that you could work with the representative on to make sure that the opt-out provisions are fleshed out in a way that are satisfactory. I think that that's certainly space in between the two ends right now. Members, any other questions? Representative.
Can I ask one more question? Because I just feel there's a lot of concern about this bill from previous testifiers and from you. Can you help me understand what is the fear of what outcome? In other words, what's the worst case scenario if we have a curriculum about having healthy relationships?
Well, again, I don't know what healthy relationships are as
No, I
defined
know.
in this
But
bill.
so what's the worst case?
There could be a lot of cases, but we're seeing just for an example in the sex ed where students are being taught how to have sex, and there's an agenda being promoted to encourage students to have sex. There's a promotion of certain values that, whether it be, relationships among students, sexually, romantically, and other issues where parents are very concerned. But again, that's just one piece. I don't know what else this includes because it's not being defined.
So you're saying there are school districts in Texas right now encouraging students to have sex with one another?
When you're looking at some of the curriculum that's being used, like the 3 R's curriculum, that's what it's promoting.
And there are school districts doing that currently in Texas?
Those resources are being used right now to inform.
To encourage students to have sex?
That's what you're looking at, and I'm happy to share some information with you, sir.
I would love to
there's
see
and I'm sure Ms. Simmons has a lot of information on where these types of relationships are being promoted, and it's been very concerning when we're talking to parents who are saying these aren't the values that we want our children taught. We want our students to be learning about math and reading and science, but instead they're being taught other things. And again, we're not sure what relationships are being taught here. It's not clearly defined.
Well, I'd love, if you could provide that with the committee, that would be great.
Happy to do so, sir.
All right. Thank you, Representative. Any other questions? Ma'am, thank you
Thank you.
very much. All right. Mason Pruitt, testifying neutrally on the bill, and you will be followed by, well, I'll figure that out. You're up.
Thank you, Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Mason Pruitt. I'm representing the Texas Homeschool Coalition. Representative Gonzalez, we've worked closely with their office over the last weekend to kind of get some language into the committee substitute to address many of the concerns that many of the men and women testifying have brought up about the parental concerns, the opt-out, and then inside of that also some current concerns about whether or not there would be any punitive measures taken against students if they were to be removed from the program, or if the parents would have a way to appeal a complaint against the school district if they were not notified of the course. And we made sure that there was some very specific language inputted, and in fact it was directly taken from the process from, I believe what they've referenced as SHAC, from the sex ed statute, and that same process of requiring that a notice be sent out prior to the beginning of the school year that this course would be added to the curricula, and then outline where they can find the curriculum to review it. And then also I believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Mrs. Gonzalez, that there is a clarification that the parents can even have a communication with the board of directors and the committee to address parts of the curriculum to make changes if they feel as if that's necessary. And so I think the language that we've worked with them over the last weekend, which is relatively new, which is why I probably assume the testifiers haven't heard of it or haven't gotten a chance to review it completely, I think that should adequately address many of the concerns that were brought up. But again, obviously they can't testify on something that they haven't read, but that is something that would probably need to be reviewed. But
All right. Are you done?
yeah.
Okay. Representative Gonzalez.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to say everything that you gave us, we did put in the bill, and I want to say thank you for coming to us proactively and working with us. And you have been great actors, and in public policy is collaborative. And so thank you so much for coming in. I've been very happy to work with your organization.
Awesome. Thank you, Representative.
All right. And members, any other questions? All right. Before you go, I may have not been paying attention at the very, very beginning. If you could just restate for the record your name, who you're with, and your position on the bill.
My name is Mason Pruitt. I'm representing the Texas Homeschool Coalition, and I'm neutral on the bill, or the Texas Homeschool Coalition is neutral on the bill.
Thank you very much. Thank you for being
Thank
here.
you.
All right. Next we have Jan Freese. Freeze? Freeze.
But I'm not.
And you'll be followed by Josette Saxton. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you very much. My name is Jan Freese. I am testifying today for House Bill 366 on behalf of the Texas Counseling Association and on behalf of the Texas School Counselor Association. HB 366 to incorporate age-appropriate curriculum on healthy relationships completely aligns with the Texas model for comprehensive school counseling programs. Through classroom guidance, the classroom guidance component of the Texas model, school counselors go into classrooms to deliver developmentally appropriate lessons grounded in research, focused on interpersonal skills, intrapersonal skills, personal health and safety, and college and career readiness. The Texas Model for Comprehensive School Counseling Programs is heavily resourced in the Texas Long Range Plan for Public Education that was recently adopted by the State Board of Education following extensive public debate and discussion. The Texas model could be an excellent source for content for this curriculum, teaching students the skills to communicate effectively with others, to set reasonable and appropriate boundaries, to engage in dynamic dialogues are essential components for a safe and secure campus. This is an excellent piece of legislation. It aligns with the recommendations that were made across the summer on the Select Committee on School Safety. We must teach children how to defend themselves, how to communicate with each other, how to communicate in conflict, and to effectively resolve difficult and challenging issues. So I strongly recommend your support of House Bill 366. Thank you very much.
Thank you, very much. Members, any questions? All right, thanks. Next we have Josette Saxton.
Good morning, committee members. My name is Josette Saxton with Texans Care for Children, and we are in support of this bill. I wasn't planning on testifying. I did originally submit a card of support, but hearing some of the information and the concerns, I felt compelled to come up and just say, from the perspective of somebody who really looks to research on how to support children's mental health and well-being, and looking at what are the evidence-based recommendations that are recommended to prevent things like dropping out of school, bullying, substance use, suicide, violence, all of these different social issues that are preventing our kids from being able to be engaged learners, to be able to focus on learning math, history, science, all of the things that we want our kids to be doing at school. All of, again, the best practices show that amongst them, ability to communicate with others, ability to resolve conflict, to make responsible decisions, to have those healthy relationships with adults and their peers are all protective factors against a whole slew of the things that are getting in the way of our kids being healthy, safe, and learning. So again, the skills that are being referenced here in this bill echo the same things that again, experts with objective, just looking at how can we help our kids to be successful and healthy, they support these things. So I strongly urge the committee to support this bill.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Members, any questions? All right. Is there anyone else who wishes to testify on, for, or against House Bill 366? All right, seeing none at this time, the chair withdraws the committee substitute for the bill and recognizes Representative Gonzalez to close.
Thank you, Chairman. And thank you, members. I just want to make sure you're ready for the floor this morning and give you some lively debate. I do want to say I wish we lived in a different world. I wish we lived in a world where there wasn't violence, or there wasn't bullying, or there wasn't, or where kids were taught at home even how to communicate. Hey, I'm in trouble. Hey, I'm being pressured. Hey, I'm being bullied. Hey, anything. But the reality is that children aren't always taught this, and the consequence is personal to them. But then if it's not managed, then it's communal for us, right? These are the kids who then end up doing issues of mass violence or having other serious issues. And so we can not look at the research and we can say everything's going to be fixed, or we can say, look, there is data, there is research, and I think that there is a balance between all sides of how to make sure kids have the tools to holistically be healthy and our communities be safer. And I think this is all what this bill is about, is to make sure that we can set up all kids for success, and specifically the kids who are the most vulnerable and who are in those homes that they are not being taught how to communicate, especially in times of need. And with that, I close.
All right.